Alright guys, we're about to hop on the 2024 Indian Scout Classic. I believe it's called. My first motorcycle, as longtime subscribers will know, was an Indian Scout. I am partial. This is not the tech, this is just the base Classic. Absolutely beautiful. Super similar to the original, or the original modern day Indian motorcycle Scout. Engine is new, pipe is new, everything's new. But, let's be honest, what stands out to you the most about this bike? The engine, with those polished caps, smoother casings, and this big fat pipe. I'm just telling you right now, no ifs, ands, or buts, that's hideous. It's too big, too fat, needs to go. Bike is on. Start her up. They don't even have a sticker with its stats, so I will put the specs up on the screen. Oh my god, I love it. This bike is light as butter. Oh my god, these, my friend, are some forward controls. So, as you guys know, hold on, let me get my lid. The Indian Scout is the motorcycle that made me get my license at the ripe old age of 45. Loved the way it looked. Dreamt about it for a year. Almost made the tragic mistake of getting a Triumph Bonneville Bobber, but I got my Scout. And I loved it. I should still have it. It was my first motorcycle. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't care who you are, I don't care what the bike is, don't ever sell your first motorcycle. Keep it. Because as you get more experience, you get more powerful bikes, heavier bikes, all that stuff. That first bike will always feel like an enjoyable toy, and you'll never get tired of it. I understand, financially speaking, and that was the case for me, I could not have two bikes. It's unfortunate. It's probably that way for most people, but just saying, if you have the chance to keep it, keep it. But anyways, they have redesigned our favorite Indian Scout. Liquid cooled. What is it? I want to say 1200 cc's now. I don't remember the specs. But I expect this bike to compare very favorably to the last version. The last version had tons of low down torque, plenty of power higher up in the RPMs for highway cruising. There was nothing about that bike that was unsatisfying. I put about 7,000 miles on my Scout before I chose to move into baggers. And I did that at the time because I had a lot of issues with neck pain, like right here with the stock seating position. I'm leaning forward a little bit, not nearly as much as on the Sport Chief. Feet are way far forward. Typical forward control riding position, not unusual, and not my favorite, to be honest. I think when it came to the Chieftain and the Challenger, they have floorboards that are so big, I was basically riding with mid controls. My feet were all the way back on the board, so it was perfectly comfortable. The FTR, my feet are underneath me and a little back, and I really enjoy that. Like being able to stand up on my tippy toes, brace yourself, whatever. Legs don't get tired in that seating position. And on the Scout, 7,000 miles, 7 months, a lot of all-day rides. I found myself getting fatigued by the riding position. I already had one pinched nerve and ended up developing a second. I started to adjust the bike, swap out the handlebars, put a new seat on, try to make it more comfortable, try to give myself a more upright seating position, and I regretted it because the bike didn't feel the same. I didn't enjoy it as much. I felt like I was sitting on top of the motorcycle, not in the motorcycle. That, for me, that's a very real experience. So I made the decision to go to Baggers, and you guys know how that story goes. Anyways, you know, nothing really different about this brand new Scout compared to the old one as far as all the things that made me get rid of it. You know, I'm leaning forward a little bit, craning my neck a little bit. If I was on this bike for half an hour, I'd start to feel it. I will say, just coming into this light, brakes are a little mush. You know, these aren't the Brembos from the Sport Chief. Oh. God. That's embarrassing. The seat feels reminiscent of the original Scout seat. That kind of horse saddle. It's touching me in the same spots. But again, you know, there are people who do touring on Indian Scouts, and all the power to them. I could not do that. I tried. I actually rigged the bike up for luggage, had saddlebags. I did some overnight trips, and it just put me too much pain. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. That's what Baggers are for, baby. Now, the suspension, I can't see it. I didn't think to look too much in depth before I got on the bike. I never had an issue with the Scout's progressive suspension. I want to say they added an inch. I could be wrong. This bike should redline pretty high up there. Liquid cooled. I mean, I gotta be honest, in this short little ride so far, I'm not sensing really any real difference between this and the last Scout, the last engine. Now, I am gonna ride the Indian Scout 101 next, and I feel like I'm gonna have a lot to say about that bike now that I'm on an FTR, and I'm gonna save my engine analysis for that. Bike is perfectly maneuverable. It's not a corner carver. You know, you're gonna scrape pegs if you lean this bike over any real degree. Don't know what they did with seat height. Again, I will put all those specs up on the screen, or I already have. You probably know more about this bike than I do right now. But it's beautiful. Gas tank is a little bigger. I think it's up to 3.5 gallons from 3. Every little extra drop makes all the difference in the world. And I have been painfully reminded that on my FTR that has a whopping 3-gallon tank and never leaves sport mode. No modes on this bike. This is not the, you know, Tech Plus whatever it is that Indian came out with. All their doodads. No rider modes, just a basic bike. And for those of you thinking about an Indian Scout first bike, don't hesitate. Very forgiving throttle, as long as you have a cool head, you know. Motorcycle can only do what you tell it to do. If you tell it to do a lot of dumb stuff, it's gonna do it. But if you're, you know, responsible, reasonable, you won't have any trouble learning how to ride on this bike. It was my first bike right out of class. Spent several days in a parking lot just getting used to the friction zone, getting used to turning, looking where I'm going, just sitting on the bike, for crying out loud. And, you know, I think by my 10th day on the bike, I was on the highway. Scared to death. I will say, not crazy about the switchgear on the Scout. It's basically FTR switchgear. Well, you know, it's a demo ride. You can only do what the guy in front of you is going to let you do. Sorry, guys, I just can't really rip on it that much. Third gear, 4,000 RPM, 60 miles an hour. Feels like it could keep on going. I'm sure it can. Get a little vibration around 55, higher RPMs. It's not terrible. It's not, you don't have to grip the handlebars real tight on this. You shouldn't be having a lot of hand numbness from that. You're not leaning forward as much as you were on the Sport Chief by comparison. Not as much as you are on the FTR, but it's just your whole body position on the FTR is just different. You're leaning more far forward, but your whole body's more forward. Bike feels super responsive. Going around a curve so far has, no issues. I never had any issues on my old Scout. I did put a windshield on my Scout. If you're gonna go for longer rides, you might want to consider it. Yeah, guys, just a really nice introductory cruiser. You can learn on this bike. You would enjoy riding this bike for years. Even once you move on to other things, if you keep this bike, it won't bore you, it won't disappoint you. Different tools for different jobs, if you're just bopping around town, going out for a countryside ride, nothing wrong with an Indian Scout. You'll love it. You're going long distance, I think I was saying earlier, some people do that, long distance touring on a Scout. I just couldn't do it. Wasn't for my old bones. Perfectly serviceable around, these 30-mile-an-hour corners. They're not super sharp. 40 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour, fourth gear, it's not really enough power. Being in third gear, it says 3,800 RPMs. That you feel you got power ready to go. Plenty of torque. And this bike, it's supposed to have low down torque. It's supposed to be a high revving bike. You can certainly drive it just like a traditional standard automobile. Upshift into 55 miles an hour if you want. Probably won't enjoy it, but it's not gonna conk out on you. This guy in front of me is playing music, so if I hear that in the video, I may have to play some of my own. We shall see. From that lovely YouTube royalty-free music library. So far my conclusion is, get those revs up to 4,000 RPMs. You'll enjoy it. And just to be clear, you gotta really give it some juice to get going or you're gonna stall. Not sure what that's about. Pretty good twist of the throttle to get power in first gear. You don't want too much power, but you don't want to have to actually make an effort either. Again, transmission, excellent. Good positive feedback, finding neutral, easy peasy. Again, short rider, 5 foot 5 inches, feet flat on the ground without a second thought. Well, first gear is a little weird. Not sure why. Bike does not love to be low down in the revs. Under 3,000 RPMs is not its sweet spot. I don't recall having anything like that on the old Scout. I just recall, you could pretty much shift at any speed, any RPMs, you'd be just fine. First gear was nice and responsive. Take any effort to get underway, but you weren't gonna wheelie or anything if you're a rookie. Come on, guys, drive. Well, as I've said in the past, when you're on a demo ride, you can only do what the guy in front of you lets you do. I don't know, one thing, guys, I'm saying, under 3,000 RPMs is terrible, or really needs to be at 4,000 RPMs or more to really feel some good, usable, consistent power. That could just be because I've been on the FTR. I mean, the FTR, it's a scream machine, you know? I'm just freaking laying into the throttle every chance I get. Could be me, more so than the bike. So you'll have to ride it and decide for yourself. I dig the cap for the gas tank as opposed to the old kind of built-in cap that you just lift it up. That looks kind of a little more old school, classic, which is the whole aesthetic of this bike. Oh, I was saying, I'm not crazy about the switchgear. This is from the FTR, basically. It looks a little plasticky. It looks a little plastic on the FTR, I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, for that kind of bike, you know, it's basically a naked sport bike. Plastic is your friend because it's light. But this is a cruiser. It's got chrome pipes, chrome bars, chrome accents. Put some freaking chrome switchgear on here, man. At least gloss black to match the tank. This just looks ridiculous. Looks like, oh, well, we had some leftovers. Let's just use that. That's not cool. I think the new price of these is what? 13, 14 grand? That's a lot of money for a motorcycle. No reusing of parts in my book. And yes, that includes the headlight on the FTR, which is just a retread of the Pathfinder that Indian has been using for years. Not cool. Seems like the bike needs a tune for a little more low down power in first gear. And that, in fact, would be my only hesitation for a rookie on this specific motorcycle is, you know, if you got to really squeeze some throttle to get going in first gear, it's only so much more until you're really going, and, you know, it could be tough for a rookie. That's what parking lot practice is for. So, just for the record, riding this motorcycle in this demo ride, I can't really compare it to the FTR's V-twin. Haven't really been able to open it up too much at much higher RPMs. Nothing on a highway. It's a pretty chaste ride. But as we'll get into when I ride the Indian Scout 101, I suspect it's the same exact engine that's on my bike. But honestly, guys, you know, haven't done a test ride video in forever. I'm a little rusty. I don't remember what I'm supposed to be telling you. I just know I love this bike. And regardless of whatever differences in the engine or cosmetics between this and the one that I had, it's just as awesome. If this is the bike that pulled up next to me years ago, I still would have gotten my license to buy an Indian Scout. That much I can promise you. But the engine casings are too smooth. Just gonna say it. The old engine looked better. Not gonna lie. This new one is a little too cute. Rear brake on this bike is a crime. Doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. Yeah, that's the biggest difference so far is just first gear getting underway. You gotta give it a little more juice in this engine, at least the way that it's tuned compared to the last version. That would be my big takeaway from this demo ride. Doesn't mean much. It's just a demo ride. If you have your heart set on a Scout, go get yourself a Scout. Don't think twice. Would I trade the FTR in to ride this bike? No. At this point in my riding career, wouldn't be a point. I think the FTR, for me, shockingly, weirdly, is a little more comfortable. Back of my neck's already aching on this bike. Now, granted, I did just ride the Sport Chief, so we're going on about, you know, what, almost an hour of sitting in a less favorable seating position. But I would not take this instead of an FTR, since I already have one. Yeah, rear brake really does not do a whole heck of a lot on this bike. I don't recall that being the case on my Scout, but, you know, several years ago now. Could just be me. Yeah, second gear around a turn, 1600 RPMs. I thought I was about to stall out. Well, let me correct that. If I was buying an FTR and an Indian Scout, and somehow they were the same price, and I could customize the Indian Scout however I wanted, free of charge, maybe I would get a Scout instead of an FTR. It's, you know, when I start filming my review of the FTR, we'll talk. You know, I got a type of riding I really enjoy. Let's put it that way. Like I say, different tools for different jobs. And let's just leave it at this. I don't own leathers. I don't have metal knee pads, nor am I ever going to need them. That, my friends, is the 2024 Indian Scout. Outstanding.